Hello and welcome. It is 8 o'clock. It is the 26th day of July, 2021. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM. There's a 36% chance of rain today in July in Ventura. Because if you can't talk about anything else, you could always talk about the weather. First rule of broadcasting. All right, it's Monday. That means it's time to take a look at the RPG news of the week. Unfortunately, we've already gone through most of the RPG news of the week because Wizards of the Coast can't seem to keep their mouth shut. All right, so we know about everything that's coming out of the G4 D&D Live, Fizban's Guide to All Things Dragons, even though Dragonlance is no longer canon. Wild Beyond the Witchlight, Strixhaven, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. So following up of that, there's been announcements of alternate art, deluxe editions, collector's editions of all three products. They are really pushing Strixhaven and Wild Beyond the Witchlight with all this alternate art and stuff like that, and I guess, this is just going to be their thing. They're following... Remember when comic books did the alternate cover and chrome cover and see-through cover and 3D cover thing, and abject collectors felt like they had to have one, so you would get X-Men 125 regular cover and X-Men 125 chromium cover and X-Men 125 shiny cover, and you'd spend up like $100 on the exact same comic, but they all had different color covers. Well, it looks like Wizards of the Coast is doing the exact same thing, releasing multiple copies of the exact same product, but with different color covers and alternate art and special covers and X-ray covers and glow-in-the-dark covers, all to suck up even more money for a game that you're probably going to be able to download the PDF for free. And of course, following in the footsteps of that, we also have the whole D&D canon thing that Jeremy Crawford decided to tell us about, even though I think nobody really cared, because D&D doesn't have canon. D&D doesn't have lore. Every table is completely different. Everybody tells a different story. Nobody plays the game the exact same way. D&D is simply just a rule set that we use to tell stories in. There really is no canon. But Crawford made this big deal about how everything before 2014 never happened, which, from D&D point of view, big deal. From a Forgotten Realms point of view, though, that's a huge deal, and we will talk about that in a separate log. But, of course, that means that Dragonlance, amongst other things, is no longer canon. Dragonlance never happened. And continuing with the, change everything. I never did that. We have R.A. Salvatore coming out with a new Dritz book where he's going to completely rewrite the history of the Drow because he feels, that the Drow were a racial stereotype. No, they weren't. And made people feel bad. No, they didn't. And made people look at people with different skin colors differently. No, it didn't. So now he wants to fix the racist tropes surrounding Drizzt and the Drow, all part of this, change the way people play the game, perceive the game stuff. Okay. In non-Wizards of the Coast news, Crucible 7 has announced a new edition of Victorian, the steampunk fantasy role-playing game originally published by Heresy Games in 2003. So this is basically... It's set in an alternative 1887, think Shadowrun, but Victorian instead of the future. So, goblins, Sherlock Holmes, steampunk, gear punk, Jack the Ripper, Batman, Gotham by Gaslight, that kind of stuff. Critical Role's publishing arm, Darrington Press, has announced a reboot of the Teldari campaign setting, Teldari Reborn, originally published by Green Ronin. Now this is updating that and reprinting it under their own printing press, Darrington Press, which is huge because that means that gives Critical Role complete control over that IP. Nobody else is printing it. Nobody else is doing anything with it. It is 100% theirs. That is big. Is this a hint of things to come with Critical Role and what their plans are for the future of the Darrington Press? We will wait and see, but I think it is. We also have the quarterly statistics of the hobby game industry that came out earlier this week for quarter 2. Number 1 role-playing game, of course, D&D. Surprisingly, number 2 role-playing game, Cyberpunk from Artisolian Games. So congratulations for hitting the top 5 and top 2 there, Cyberpunk / Mr. Poundsmith. Nightfall Games has announced the purchase of the rights to the Strokerverse role-playing game. No, that's not a porn game. The Strokerverse was created by Darcy Stroker, the great-grandnephew of author Bram Stroker, and created a shared universe across multiple media platforms, including novels, comics, board games, and audio dramas, centered on not just Dracula, but the other works of Bram Stoker. So I guess Bram Stoker wrote other things. The game will be using the S5S system, also by Nightfall Games, the version that we've seen in SLA Industries, and the Terminator role-playing game. We can expect a core rulebook around 2022. I didn't know there was a Stokerverse role-playing game that had come out before, or that Bram Stoker had a multiverse of anything besides Dracula. Did he write? I assume he wrote other novels. It's just the only one we're ever aware of. And Humble Bumble is back. We haven't heard from them for a couple weeks, but Humble Bumble has announced a 13th Age treasure trove. So you can get all sorts of PDFs of the 13th Age role-playing game from Humble Bumble. Minimum bid gets you $1 for some stuff, and you can go all the way up to $25 to get a whole bunch of books and maps from the 13th Age role-playing game. A very interesting premise, the 13th Age game. Very interesting take on sort of combining old school D&D max level of 10th idea with a different interpretation of religions. I really like their mythology in 13th Age. I don't know if I never got a chance to play it. I've liked a lot of the ideas though. And that is pretty much it for the RPG news of the week. Let's see what else. Mike Shilley has made all his maps from Ravenloft available for direct purchase on his website. So if there's a map from Ravenloft you want to get a purchase copy of, that's a little bit, better than the stuff in the book, you can go to Mike Shilley's website and purchase a copy of it, or a poster or a print, for up to $10. RPG Kitchen has gone live. RPG Kitchen is a role-playing rental site. I've done a separate blog about that. And not a lot going on in the world of Dungeons & Dragons that isn't Wizards of the Coast. And we've already talked about all the Wizards of the Coast stuff. And we will probably do a separate vlog on the whole D&D canon, not canon thing, because while it doesn't really affect D&D as a whole, because, Dungeons & Dragons is a system, it's not really a multiverse the way, say, Star Wars or Marvel Comics is. The Forgotten Realms is a thing, and this choice makes some pretty huge changes to the Forgotten Realms that sort of make me go, So we may have to talk about that. But until then, I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OG GM. If you appreciate the tabletop news of the week and want to hear more, let me know. If you never want to hear me talk about Wizards of the Coast ever again, let me know. Till next time, stay warm, stay dry, stay healthy, stay happy, stay sane, stay hydrated, and stay off my land.